What's going on, everybody? Hope you're all having a great day. It's a nice Tuesday, big old slate, lots of options to go to. And I am going to run through what my plays are and get into all that. Please drop in your questions and your thoughts into the chat as you come in, because I'm going to just sort of rattle them off. So I'm going to say what's up to K9. Good to see you, man. I don't think we're going to have Sheets tonight because he is at the Yankee Mets game. So a game that unfortunately is not great for DFS because it would have been fun to stack a game he was going to, but we talked about that a little bit earlier. Let's get it. Please like and subscribe and all that stuff, and I'm going to go through what I'm doing. So priorities as far as pitching goes on DK, we have a lot of good options, obviously. So I'm a little bit more spread out. I am siding with Clevenger, Nola, McClanahan as my main ones, with Strider a little bit lower owned, and then Rodon just beneath them. The only other guy I'm really mixing in is Berrios. I have no problem if you wanted to use a weird Mitch White or even the really minimum costish guy, the 5,300 we have today, the Ethan Small. There probably is enough upside in the world. I mean, he has a reasonable K prop. Like, I could see it actually working out. It's just I don't know how long he's going to pitch into the game. I don't know what his leash is, and I just feel like there's so many good options that I expect guys to be in the 30s. So trying to get 15 out of a guy is going to be a little bit harder to do today, and even that might be a bit of a reach for him. So that's what I'm doing with my pitching. I do think if I had to play one lineup on DK, that somewhere between Nola and McClanahan or one of those two with Clevenger would be what I did. I also wouldn't mind doing the Strider Clevenger thing if you needed some savings. So that's sort of what my main focus is. The stacks for me, and while they might sound somewhat chalky, they're not going to be as high owned on this slate because of the nature of the slate as you might think. Toronto is going to be the low owned one on DK especially. I think Boston will be somewhat popular. I think the White Sox will be somewhat popular. And I think the Rockies will be somewhat popular. But I like the Rockies and White Sox about the same, and I like the Dodgers. I think we're going to get them at really low ownership today. I'm just going to double check that right now with my current situations. And it's going to be similar stacks for me on FanDuel. I just think you're going to see more ownership on these guys. But right now I'm looking at almost no ownership at all in the Dodgers against their former pitcher. And we know with Gray, wide range of outcomes, really, really good stuff. But if he gets wild, and this is the kind of team that he could get wild against, they're in trouble. They have all righties in the bullpen. They already used a number of them last night. And I just think it's a good spot to play the Dodgers. I especially like the lefties. So that is what I would say about that. And I just don't think the ownership's going to be there, which we haven't seen with the Dodgers for a while, just because they have one bad night. Not afraid at all to jump right back into it. Anyway, we also have other stacks that I'm not using that I might regret. I have a lot of Cleveland mini stacks. I like San Diego as a sort of get different stack. I like Tampa Bay as a get different stack, and I like Minnesota. But I'm not getting to much of those guys except for as one-offs, two-mans, three-man, that kind of thing. That's mostly where I am right now. Oh my God, we got the Luis Garcia. Every time Luis Garcia pitches, all of our projection stuff starts to crash. So I feel for you, Goldie. Sorry about that. It's a rough one. I know it's kind of tough. But guys, get on in here. We're still missing some starting lineups, so I'm kind of letting that be. The Rockies I'll probably have more interest in if we get the A lineup, but I don't think we have the lineup out yet. No, it's still not out. And we just got the Dodgers lineup out, which is basically what we expected, with the exception of no Justin Turner today. And Trace Thompson is now batting ninth. And that's pretty much mostly what I would have expected. Some FanDuel specific plays. There's some guys that are really cheap. Austin Slater, he's cheap on DraftKings as well. Alex Verdugo in your Boston stacks. I like Verdugo quite a bit. He's 2,400. You've got the really cheap Mercedes on both sides. Basically all the Giants rough, but we know the risk. They're going to have the pinch hit risk, and we're going to have to worry about that. I haven't actually seen the Giants lineup even though it's out, but I'll back at that in a minute. Other guys that if you're desperate for value, if Josh Smith is leading off, I would take a shot there. Will Smith is very cheap over on FanDuel. I'm using a little bit of guys like Ref Schneider in my stacks for Boston. Really easy to stack Boston on FanDuel, so I'm wondering if people are just going to do that. Owen Miller on both sides, 2,600 on DK, 2,200 on FanDuel. Jesse Winker is 2,300 on FanDuel, which is a standout price. Pollock is Pollock and Eloy Jimenez are like two of the guys that didn't price up for the White Sox, so I don't mind if you want to go to either of them. And then Connor Joe seems a little bit too cheap. Just in general. And then you have Jake Lamb as the value on both sides. So that's sort of my run through the value and stuff like that. So that's sort of where I'm at. I'm glad Goldie got it fixed this time. That's really tough to do, man. I know. I don't envy you on that. That's a tough situation to be in. But it is a fun night, so I do encourage spreading out a little bit more maybe than you normally would, because I think there's a lot of good stacks with good, with reasonable options. And I am very into to the ones though that making my core be the Dodgers, Red Sox, Toronto, mixing in some White Sox, Colorado full stacks with San Diego, Tampa Bay, Minnesota mini stacks and one-offs. That's what I'm basically doing. So pop on in, say what's up, say what you're doing. Ask. I guess I didn't go through all my pictures on FanDuel. I am mostly using McClanahan and Nola because it's very easy to do. I do have some Strider, Rodon, and Clevenger. But mostly it's going to be Nola and McClanahan for me. But I think you could make an argument for Rodon at lower ownership than those guys as an interesting option. And I'm just going to take a quick look at where I have him ownership wise, because I don't believe we have him as high as I thought he would be. Yeah, I'm looking at like 10%. I think it's going to be less than that personally. That's just my personal guess, but we'll see how it goes. What's up to my man Eric? Good job, buddy. Yeah, great. Play the Braves race versus Nola on a 13-game slate and donate to the prize pool. Even if they get to them, the odds of them being the highest scoring team on the slate are just so silly to me. Like making plays like that on like a 5-game slate, it makes sense. I just don't see I don't see any reason to do that. Personally, if you're going to try and get different, just you don't need to do anything to get different. By the way, to be honest, today you don't have any players being projected and above 15% owned on any team. So I have no reason to do something weird like that personally. And if it works out, it's not going to work out so well to where you're going to win a slate hardly ever. I mean, it would take a miracle of everybody else just completely shitting the bed, and then you're going to try and pick on a pitcher who doesn't walk hitters. And yeah, he might give up some runs. And all of his numbers, by the way, when you see him giving up those runs, part of what's hard to try and beat with Nola is he gives them up late when he's in his 115th pitch and 120th pitch. So to get a whole stack to work there, I just think that's a terrible play personally. Giants are not the chalk. They have some chalky players, but they are not the chalk, in my opinion. They will have a few guys who are owned somewhat. Right now, I have the Giants. Where do I have them? Yeah, I don't have any Giant above 10% on DK right now. I haven't seen their lineup though yet, so that obviously is subject to change. They did bat Mercedes cleanup, so they're going to have somebody in there. Mercedes and Slater will be owned. Darren Ruff will get some ownership, and be careful with that one. Just going to warn you guys that there is just major pinch hit risk there for all of those guys, especially Mercedes and Ruff, but could be Slater depending on where it is in the order and how that works out. Yeah, but you knew there'd be no Jock today. He doesn't start against lefties. He never does. That's the way the Giants lineup is actually better than most of the ones I've seen them roll out against lefties, but they just had that. That's what they do. They don't play. They don't start. They don't usually start Belt against lefties either, by the way. And he is starting today, so that makes it a little bit better. But Jock is a pinch hit guy. Yastrzemski could pinch hit. There's just a lot of things that we're used to seeing with the Giants, and I would be very careful with who you play, because if you once they go to a righty in the bullpen, I think you're in trouble. I don't have any interest in Seattle. I don't really care what the temperature is because the roof is probably. I mean, is it open? Because I just it's almost always closed. But I think Dunning is not bad. He hasn't pitched well this year, but he's been pitching those. He's been effective enough at not getting just completely shelled. I have no problem if you want to do it. There's 15 teams I'd rather stack than Seattle personally at the worst hitters park in baseball. Arguably right there with the worst hitters park in baseball, if it's not the worst. So I'm not personally gonna buy into that, but I have no problem with it. I could see it being a good stack for another slate or something. But looking at it, even if they score 7 runs, like you need the power. They do have more power today because they've got J-Rod back in there, Winker's in there, but I don't know. I'm personally not high on Seattle except for his one-offs right now. I would rather play a bunch of other teams. Yeah, I don't think San Francisco is going to be as owned as everybody thinks they are. I don't feel anything about Watkins. The cheapest play on DK for me, I understand the Watkins argument, but I think that you probably would play Ethan Small and just sort of hope for the best, hope he gets his pitch count up and hope he cruises through some innings. I guess you could argue for Watkins a little bit. I mean, there's what is he, 5'8"? I'm just trying to double check my list. He's really showing up as being terrible for me. Wow, it's a little interesting that they haven't projected quite as badly as they do. I think he's definitely being under projected no matter what you look at. The guy's been over 19 fantasy points, 4 straight games on DK. It's not like the Rays are at this isn't the Rays of even a couple years ago. Just the lineup is not all that amazing. But I didn't get to any Watkins. I'm not doing it. But if you want to do it, I actually don't think that's a bad idea. If Ethan Small was going to be popular, I think this would be a good place to pivot off of him. But Small projecting for four full fantasy points more than Watkins certainly will make sure that no one plays Watkins. So I don't mind it. I don't know how you need that kind of savings on this slate when the pitchers are going to put up 30. Some of these guys are going to, at least 25 pluses. So I personally don't think that's what I would be doing. All right, let's keep on popping in. Any more questions? I'm going to get out of here in 8 minutes. Other guys who I'm finding in my lineups, I'll just go through some positions. Grandal, Kirk, Will Smith at catcher, mostly with some Vasquez. Abreu, Guerrero, Freeman, and that's pretty much most of my first baseman on DraftKings. On second base, Biggio in the Blue Jays stacks. Owen Miller, even stack or not, batting fifth, I think at 2,600 was a place I was able to save, so I was happy to do that. Third base, Matt Chapman in your Blue Jays stacks. Moncada. I have a lot of Bobby Dahlbeck, even though he's batting eighth today. I just feel like he's gonna break out one of these 2 home run games pretty soon, and I was hoping he'd be up higher in the order, but he was going to be really popular. I don't think he's going to be nearly as popular anymore. So shortstops are Trey Turner's number 1 for me. Tim Anderson's number 2. Bogarts is number 3 for me. I also have some Max Muncy at third, by the way. In the outfield, Mookie, JD Martinez, Jake Lamb as a value option. I don't mind if you want to use Mercedes as the value option. I just think that Jake Lamb will at least get his at-bats because there are no lefties in that bullpen. Nomar Mazara, another value. I have a Chad Pinder here and there. I don't think it's like a great play or anything like that. He just happens to fit price-wise and has enough pop where if he hits one out at 2,600, I don't think anybody else is going to be on that. George Springer, Teoscar Hernandez. I'm very heavy on the Blue Jays, even if I'm not stacking them today. So that's a lot what I'm doing today. Mitch White's in play. Yeah. I think like he hasn't pitched 6 innings in a game yet this season. Otherwise, I would say he'd be an interesting play on FanDuel at 6,400 because it'll allow you to build differently. But I just don't know what we're doing when we're trying to play Mitch White, who's never pitched 6 innings in a game before, over some of these other guys. I think he's fine. If I was playing 150, he would be on my list. But if you're making a lineup or 10 lineups even, it's just really hard to get to him when you've got Clevenger at 8,100 just above him. You've got Barrios against the poor version of the St. Louis Cardinals. And And by the way, because they're so bad and who they're putting out there, they are really cheap, St. Louis. Like if you wanted to get really creative, I don't think that would be the worst thing in the world to do. You maybe do a 4-4 combo with literally the 4 most expensive bats. Like maybe you do it with Colorado or something. I think there's an argument for that just because of how crazy cheap they are, but I just don't think you need to do that. You could do that with the Giants if you wanted to. Then you get worried about the platooning and all that, but I do think they're like I do like Barrios today, but I'm not going to cross off St. Louis as if I was playing 150, I would probably get a good 5 to 10% St. Louis 3-man stacks or 4-man stacks. Maybe I wouldn't go higher than that, just because I think that they're so, like I said, they're just so cheap and they make everything work. It'll allow you to do a different type of build, and while I don't expect them to be one of the highest scoring teams on the slate, I think they can certainly have 3 guys who put up double-digit fantasy points in the 2K range. So that's enough for me to take a little stack there. No, it's not crazy. The Rockies cost about twice as much as the White Sox. This is what happened. The reason the Rockies don't get ownership is because they're always priced for Coors Field, and on DraftKings they don't adjust it. They really don't adjust Coors that much. I think that on FanDuel, you will see a little bit more, but the thing is they're still really expensive over on FanDuel. And even the White Sox are just cheaper. That's really the simple answer. Both pitchers are capable of allowing nothing or getting hammered. They have a huge range of outcomes in both of those pitchers, Marquis and Kopech. So that is something to keep an eye out for. All right, guys, fire on in any last second questions, any 1v1s, any 2v2s, any 5v5s, any 9v9s, anything you got out there. Let's do it. I'm going to have to change a few Justin Turner lineups out of my stacks. And then I will I'll be with you guys. I'm just making sure. Yeah, Justin Turner is my only one who's not in the actual lineup who I had, which is pretty good. By the way, I do want to say I left my 333 up. I played one lineup last night on one big lineup on FanDuel, and it was the same as my initial build, and didn't end up getting there, but I ended up finishing 19th in the monster. And just to show, that sometimes there's some value to take a look at these early builds. Sometimes I'll change them, and sometimes I won't change them much. And it worked. I don't have any Yankee stacks. I think it's good hitting weather. I think it's okay. Like, I'll just point out that Taijuan Walker has been one of the best pitchers at suppressing home runs this season. But pitch profile wise, he does seem like a kind of guy the Yankees could get to. So I am absolutely on board. If you want to do it, I would make sure it was a small buy in large field. There's no way I would commit significant money to the Yankees on this kind of a slate, but I would definitely consider them for some of those large field and in the lottery and that kind of thing. I think there is there's some upside for them. A little bit worse without Stanton, of course, but I certainly wouldn't mind getting a little bit of exposure. It's probably is it the lowest total we've seen for the Yankees this season at 4? I don't remember seeing one much lower, even in tough matchups. I remember them. Maybe they had a few 3.7s or something, but I don't know. They're really hard to play too on DraftKings. I mean, you've got look at these prices. 5,100 LeMahieu, 6K Judge, 4,900 Rizzo, 5K Glaber, 5.2 Carpenter, Josh Donaldson 4.7, even Hicks down at the bottom of the order 3.6, 3.5 for Calefa, 3.2 for Trevino. It's the pricing would make it really tough on DK. On FanDuel, I think taking a little stab at it might not be the worst idea, especially in large field stuff. All right, guys. Well, I want to get it tonight. Please like it and all that before you get out of here. The A's had a low total last night and scored 7 runs. And guess what? They did not win you guys anything. I had a chance to win the freaking monster with the Indians stack it with 1 run. Though did anybody even score double? I don't think anybody scored double digits for them, right? On DraftKings scoring. I'm pretty sure nobody had double-digit fantasy points. So if you're going to make that argument, Eric, you may as well just say, forget everything. Why do I spend all my time on these things? Because that's just well, they've got a low total. I'll play that team. I mean, seems like a really, 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 really terrible way of philosophy of gambling to me. But if you want to do it, like, I don't know which team you're even referring to tonight. You could play the A's. Yeah, sure. I don't think it's a good play. I don't see any reason to do it. You're just basically firing out names. You already named enough stacks that make it really, really hard to play anymore. So how many lineups are you playing? And if you do, are you just like, you're playing 150 lineups and you'll stack every single team in baseball each 5 times? I just think that's a really terrible way of playing DFS. So I am going to take run totals as an indicator. I don't take it as gospel, but that's where I'm at. Yeah, sure. Once in a while you get lucky, but when you get lucky, you have to win the slate. Like, you have to actually be good enough to win the slate. It's, the A's team from last night wouldn't have won any penny tonight on tonight's slate. So that's my argument against that. Anyway, guys, I do appreciate all you guys being here. I will be in Discord all night, as will, I'm sure, Rhodey and the whole crew. And we want to make some money. We want to see some guys at the top of the leaderboards again to pull an Eric Johnson like he nailed one last night. Let's win some money, and hopefully we'll see you guys at the top of the leaderboards a little later today. Good luck, everybody.